afternoon, everyone, and welcome to BIM for Builders. In today's class, we're going to discuss what is BIM and how can a builder use BIM in their businesses. We'll be showing you practical examples how other builders have used BIM, and we'll go right into some BIM software and show you all of the BIM features in the software and how you could use them to your advantage. Following the presentation, we're going to open up the chat panel so you can type in any questions that you might have during the broadcast, and we'll be able to answer them live following the live presentation. So if you have any questions at any time, don't hesitate to type them in, and at the very end of the presentation, I'll be able to look at your questions and answer them for you. So let's begin by understanding what is BIM. So we're going to go through and look at, first of all, the history of how we get our design. So originally, you were probably handed years ago, or maybe still some people are receiving hand-drafted drawings for the building that they were creating. Now, those drawings, beautiful, nicely done, but they wanted to automate the system. Technology advancements can, positively affect all of the processes. So instead of hand drafting anymore, we began 2D CAD. And your draftsmen or the people you get your drawings from would be able to create the drawings quicker and more efficiently, and especially when it comes to revisions. 2D CAD allowed them to go in and quickly change things and print those drawings out again, no longer needing the electric eraser and making those changes manually. Then came 3D models, and 3D models had the effect of kind of optimizing the system. There were new ways to solve problems. You could create that 3D model and take a look at the entire design and kind of troubleshoot ahead of time what was going to happen in that building. Well, then everything advanced further again, and from there we became familiar with BIM. BIM is Building Information Modeling, and what it does is it kind of connects the whole process. So when you receive the drawings, perhaps they're in PDF format or DWG format from your designer, from that original paperwork that you're receiving from a PDF or a DWG file, you can then transform that and make it a BIM model so that from there we can export out the files to different file formats so we can share them with other professionals. We can generate perspectives and get our working drawings and our estimate from that model. And then we can submit it for approval. In some countries already, building submittals have to be done with a BIM model. They're no longer accepting 2D plans. They want to see the BIM model. That has already happened in Singapore as an example, and in the UK that legislation is coming down right now as well. So people are adopting BIM because they see that being able to take that information out of the model helps in so many different ways of creating a more efficient workspace. Now, 71% of building professionals are already using BIM, and those building professionals could be designers, architects, builders themselves. It could be your building supply centers. 71% have already adopted some kind of BIM application and are taking the information from the models that they're building and extracting that in different ways. So we have an intelligent building model. What are the benefits of that model for a builder? What can I use as a builder out of a BIM model? Well, the easiest and quickest benefit of a BIM model for a builder is your presentation to clients. You'll be able to create photorealistic renderings for them because you have that 3D model. When you have a client that just can't understand what you're trying to convey in your design, and if I move this window, this is what's going to happen, many people can't visualize. You show them a set of 2D plans, very hard for them to understand exactly what you're trying to convey for them. But if you can put in front of them a photorealistic rendering where they can actually visually see and envision themselves in that space, it becomes easier for them. There's also animation files. So you can create an animation where you're walking through the building itself, and you can show them again so they understand this is what happens when you walk through the front door. This is the flow of the building and how you get into the kitchen, as an example in this animation that we've provided for you. There's also virtual models. There's lots of websites where you can park your models, your 3D model that you've drawn, and at their leisure, your clients can go up and walk through the model. They don't need to have your software. They can export, you can export it out of your BIM application and put it up on a portal site, so your clients can go up and see their home, and you can walk through it and at their leisure, and they can leave sticky notes. There's lots of different exports available for that type of application as well. So if it's hard to connect with a client, they work all day, they can't get a hold of you at nighttime, sometimes these virtual models and client portals can be an excellent way of relaying the information to them. Next benefit for a builder of having an intelligent model is the bill of materials, creating quotes to send out to your clients, and ordering materials as well, so that you know exactly how many studs are in that building, how many sheets of drywall that you're going to need, bundles of shingles. That intelligent model is going to be able to pull that information directly from it. So before, in the land of hand drafting, you had to interpret the plan and measure off of it, highlight different areas where you wanted to get a bill of materials, measuring it all out. But now with that model that you can create, it's going to give you all of those materials automatically. As you're drawing through those walls, it's going to calculate for you all of the different values. And at the same time, you've got that presentation that you've made to the client so they can fully understand everything that you're building. Another benefit to a builder is clash detecting. There's nothing worse than getting on site and realizing that no one thought of headroom in a set of stairs, and you're dealt with the situation there. The homeowner's looking at you. Well, you're the builder. Well, maybe you weren't the designer, and you were just reading off the plans, and not until you got on site did you realize that's not going to work. These plans don't work, and I think we've all been in that situation where you get on site and this just isn't working. What do we do? Well, when you have that 3D model and it's a direct reflection of what you're going to build, you can see those options right away and fix them in the virtual model before it becomes a costly mistake on site. Framing. You can virtually frame your models as well. So again, that helps out with clash detections. Is there interference with any ductwork that might be going through, or plumbing? You can also do span tables. So as a builder, when you're looking at the plan, and maybe they're calling out just a couple 2x8s over an opening, you're looking at it and think, well, that's a large opening. I don't know if that's the correct materials that I need for that header. There's span tables built into software as well, so that as you put in an opening, it'll automatically look to the span table, your preferred header material that you want to use for that particular span, and it'll tell you the materials that you need as well. Break it all into a cut list. And for those of you that maybe are working with people on site that need more direction, you can even break it out into a wall panel diagram as well, so that you can hand the framers on site a diagram. Here you go to it. Structural information. For those of you that are going to be ordering from MyTech, maybe their trussing systems, Warehouser for their floor joists, or Boise, or Keymark, or CSD, there's a couple of different companies that provide structural analysis on the models and provide you with their products. The model that you create can automatically be exported out into these various formats as well, so saving you time is a big thing there. I know they do the work for you, but sometimes they're so busy and you need to get your information out today. Things are happening quicker than you thought. If you can provide them with the model, well, then they can automatically do those calculations because they're bringing in the model. Lighting calculations. If you've ever worked with a homeowner that thinks, oh no, we just want one light in the room, trying to cut costs, but they really don't understand the task lighting that's involved in the kitchen. You want some extra lighting in those areas, those key areas, like over the range or over the sink. You can show them the real lighting in the space, in that virtual model, so that they can see those dark areas that they're going to want to avoid. So again, another way of working with the client to show them the design and how it may or may not work. Also, an energy analysis, especially for submittals now. In most states, you have to have your energy analysis attached to your plan for submittal, coming right from, again, that BIM model. Some of the information that you can pull from that model is energy analysis. So you don't have to do a separate check. It automatically is doing that for you. It's extracting and sending it out. So another key benefit. Also sharing. So if you're working with other trades and you need to provide them with information, like kitchen cabinetry, you want to send off the design here, design the kitchen cabinetry, instead of having them to redraw that model all over again, and the potential for error if they move the window one way or another or forget it altogether. This way they're working from that same model that you are. You know it's correct. They're working from it and they're building around it. So there's no surprises later when they redrew it and oops, we thought that was 1 foot shorter than it was and there's a problem again on site. They can build the virtual kitchen, bring it back into your BIM model so you can see it as you're doing that virtual tour to check for everything and then understand exactly how everything goes together. So what I'd like to do now is give you a presentation of using a BIM product and all of the derivative, all of that extra information that you can pull off of it because it is an intelligent model. The big thing when I talk to people about BIM is people say, I'm looking for a BIM, I need a BIM. BIM really isn't a thing. It's a process. It's building an intelligent model that you can pull information off of. So I'm going to build a model for you, and then we'll see all of the information that I can pull off of it as an added bonus that as a builder I would find beneficial. So I'm going to go into our product now called Envisioneer. And this is Envisioneer. And the one thing that when you're looking at BIM products, you want it to be as easy to use as possible. So it's not a big process to go through again to pull off of this information, because if it's a big process, then what's the real benefit of having that information? If it takes too long to get the information, well, then it's not a real benefit to you. You could have gotten it another way. So when you're looking at BIM products, always think of how easy is it to use and how much information can I pull off of it that's a benefit to me. So I'll show you how to build a BIM model in this software, pull off the information, and then we'll talk again about BIM benefits with it as well. I'm going to start off by clicking on this wall tool. So all of these tools that you see here under the building tab help to build the model itself. So when I click on walls or doors or windows, floors, ceilings, roofs, stairs, they're all model components. So when I'm clicking on walls, the catalog panel here to the right of the screen will show me all the available walls that I have. Now, if your GoToMeeting console is covering up that area right now and you can't see it, you'll notice up at the very top of your GoToMeeting console, there should be a red arrow. And if you click on that red arrow, not the red X, but the red arrow, that will minimize that GoToMeeting console, so you'll be able to see more of my screen. Now that I've clicked on walls, I go over into my catalog of various wall styles available, and I choose one that I want to begin working with. So I'm going to start drawing, as our example today, I'll start drawing with 2x6, and I'll use some siding. I move my cursor out onto the drawing screen. When I move my cursor out here, it's ready to start drawing. So for those of you that are receiving your designs maybe by PDF or a DWG file, you can import those as a basis to start drawing. It doesn't have to be a blank slate like this where you're looking at the PDF and looking at the screen and typing in all those dimensions. You can come up to File and import that PDF. It will be like a 2D plan on the screen that you can trace over, and same with the CAD file. We can bring in a DXF or a DWG file. We can also bring in a JPEG file. So for those of you that might have scanned in a plan on a flatbed scanner and saved it as a JPEG, you can bring those in as well. They're always best, though, in a PDF or a CAD file format because you know they're going to be more accurate. Did you place it on top of the flatbed scanner correctly? Was it a little bit skewed? Those can have effects on the overall model. So the best, if you're going to import it and reuse information that you've received, is in PDF or CAD, DWG, or DXF format. So once we have those, and those would be on the screen, and I would just click over and left click on each of the corners to create that. But for those of you that want to start out by drawing the model to begin with, you've talked to the client, you've been on site, maybe it's a remodel situation, maybe it's a new home, you've taken down notes, you've done some measurements, and now you're coming in to just create that visual. I'm going to left click to get started on building that model. And as I move my cursor, you'll notice that dimensions appear to help you get started. It's telling you the distance, how far I'm pulling that wall so far. I'm going to draw your attention down to the bottom of the screen where you'll see distance and direction. That allows me to type in exact distances as well. So if you do have the dimensions from on site, you can just directly type in there 20 feet and hit enter, and it creates a 20-foot wall. So as I'm going through, I can type in those exact dimensions, or if it's a remodel situation, I'm coming up with maybe an add-on to the house, I can just point and click and watch the dimensions appear or line them up with other walls that may be already part of that design that I'm coming up with. So I'm just left clicking here, or I could type in the dimensions or line them up with other walls to get that initial wall layout done. Now my walls, my exterior walls, to begin with, have been inserted. But what makes these walls intelligent? I'm going to double click on one of the walls that I've inserted. And by double clicking on that wall, it will show me the information about that wall itself. So that wall itself knows that it's a framed wall. And because it knows it's a framed wall, it'll automatically put framing into that wall. Putting framing into that wall, it looks down here at the bottom of this dialog box and says, well, what's the default framing member that I'm going to be using for this wall? And here we can see it's a 2x6. If I click on this framing member button here, that takes me out further into my catalog where I can pick any size of member that I wanted. So if I wanted a 2x4, or if I wanted to use even some steel framing, I could steel frame it as well. So you're just telling it exactly what you're using. These members, they're intelligent too, so for ordering purposes as a builder, you want to make sure you're getting the right cut lengths as well. So each one of these members has a purchased member length put into it. So you can see I've got my 92 5/8 pre-cut stud length, an 8-footer, 104 5/8, another pre-cut stud length, 10-footer, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, all the different lengths that this particular 2x6 is available in. And when we're looking at these purchase lengths, it can have rules set to them as well. So looking at this 2x6 pre-cut stud, you can see the rule down here at the very bottom. This can only be used for stud material. So it's not all of a sudden going to try to use it as your bottom plates or your top plates. When it comes with a 92 5/8 pre-cut stud length, it knows just use that for studs. And when I look at my 8-footer, it'll have rules associated to it as well. When I look at it, it says don't use it for blocking and don't use it for plate material. I've set these rules up so that when I'm looking at my 16-footer, it can be used for anything, and it's my optimum length for my top plates and bottom plates. Everything else is said don't use it for a plate. So when you're looking at how you like to frame your buildings, you can very specifically tell it how to use all of these different members so that when it comes to ordering the different lumber that you're going to require, it's going to have that all done for you here because it's intelligently putting all of those members to frame in that building. So it's a framed member, it's a 2x6. Top and bottom tab here allows us to deal with the height of the walls. So when I'm putting in this wall, it's using this auto extend option right here. That means when I put a roof on top of this building, on top of these walls know that they're directly related to the plate height of that roof. So if I put the roof on and change the plate height to be 10 foot of the roof on one side, that wall is going to grow up to be a 10-foot wall. Or if I gable it up, it could automatically bloom frame it up to that wall as well. So again, it's going to know how to frame the wall and to what heights by looking here. As you're drawing the wall, it can also associate trim to it. Same type of information for the trim as with the members that we associated for framing. So when I'm looking at the baseboards as an example, it'll tell me the linear footage of baseboard that I'm going to require. if I wanted to have crown molding or chair rail, or if there's casing around the openings, all of that's automatically calculated. As soon as I punch a hole into that wall for a door or a window, it'll automatically put the casing around it and order me the correct lengths that I'm going to need as well. Now, all of our trim lengths, again, can have that purchase member length. So I can tell it that I can order it in 10-foot lengths or 12-foot lengths, or I can leave it as just give me the total linear footage, and I can break that down into to what kind of cuts I want to make out of that. The appearance page just deals with what does this wall look like when I go into 3D. So I'm looking at this exterior surface, and you can see I've got this material looking like the siding here on the big picture here that I'm moving around. That image for that siding is just a JPEG or a bitmap. So that allows you to have all of the latest material choices available for your clients. So if there's a brand new siding or stucco or brick or stone available and they want to see it, you can go up to the manufacturer's website, download the sample that they have, or even with your own digital camera, take a picture of it. So again, they can see exactly what it's going to look like. You're adding intelligence to it. These materials as well, if I look at that siding that we've chosen as an example, can also, I'm just going to edit it here, can also have a website associated to them. So you can hyperlink that right up to the manufacturer's website so you can grab all the information as you need it. So each material can be directly linked just from that JPEG right to the ordering website if you wanted it to as well. So as you're drawing, it knows exactly where it's coming from too. And this last page is our quantity tab. So as I'm drawing this wall, this is where it's assembling all the materials that it's going to need to build that wall. So I have my siding, the nails that it's going to use, the starter strip, house wrap, sheathing tape, the sheathing, nails, staples, drywall that I'm going to need, insulation, the vapor barrier, staples again for it, wall framing nails, primer and paint. So you can get right down to how many gallons of paint are going into here. It's all attached intelligently to this wall, so as you draw it, it's automatically creating those calculations for you. And then just general measurements as well. So if you just wanted to do kind of a double check to make sure that those figures are correct and that you're ordering the right materials, these common measurements allow you to say, okay, what is the exterior wall surface area and what is the length of all of my interior walls, just so I can double check that how many sheets of drywall it's there. That's what makes it an intelligent model, the BIM model, building information model. I can pull all of that information from that particular wall. So even just drawing these walls so far, if I go up to our Tools pull-down menu and analyze the model, you can see that I can automatically get the area perimeter of the model, generate a project estimate, generate a quote for it, and Green 3D Home is just a website where you can grab valuable tips about building in green and 3D. And ResCheck is where it's going to analyze that model for you to do your energy analysis. So let's start here with generating that project estimate. It's going to pull up our estimate. I'm going to put it into a format here. So when we're looking at the estimate of what I've drawn so far, I've got my ground floor wall framing. I've got the framing nails. I'm going to need a box of nails for those walls. I've got 23 12-footers, 14 14-footers, and 8 16-footers. So I've grabbed a mix of 12, 14s, and 16s. And again, with those framing rules that I was showing you associated to each member length, you can tell it, hey, I just want to use 16s. Or no, I want a mix of 12s, 14s, and 16s. 53 sheets of OSB, and I need 172 pre-cut studs. As soon as I put that information in, started drawing those walls, it looked to that intelligent information behind the wall and started relaying this information out for it. So all the information that I need so far for all of those different items in my model. Okay. Now that I have that information, let's start adding more information to it. Now I'm going to click on a door. Again, that catalog panel to the right where I picked my initial type of walls is shown. So from here, I can scroll down and find any size of door that I want. So I'm going to, let's grab on just a double door here. And I'll right-click with my cursor. So right-clicking brings up the option that I can automatically center it on this wall. There's the center point. So as I'm putting it on, it automatically knows I want to center it, center it, center it, and it'll pull in that information. I can grab windows and do the exact same thing. Right-click, I can tell it how far away I want to be from a corner. So if I want all of these windows to be 2 feet from the corners, I can just go through and it'll automatically show me how to be exactly 2 feet from a corner. So it's intelligently putting all of these in through our model. I can just put them all through. Now everything that I've drawn so far, those windows, those doors, and those walls, all have 3D components to them as well. So even at this point, I can go down at any time, click on this 3D Quick View button, and tell it that I want to look at my model from one of these corners. So I'm going to look at it from the lower left-hand corner. And there's my model so far that I've drawn. So even from here, I think a client would better understand looking at this 3D model than it would looking at just the 2D. So that's the easiest benefit of working with a BIM model. It's a model, it's in 3D, clients can understand it better. But the derivative of having all of that as well is even now coming up to analyze that model again and generate that project estimate. I have my openings going through. There's my windows that are going through and being put in. So it can see the doors, the windows, everything that I've put in is automatically added through. And now that I have those in, you can see the trim that's being calculated as well. So if I scroll over here, door jambs, lock sets, there's my trim, sills, baseboard, casing around the openings, going through, cutting those walls, and automatically putting in that trim for me that I required. So as you put things in, it's automatically going to count them. Now another big bonus of being able to put these intelligent elements in is they can pull themselves off into schedules as well. So I can analyze the model and create different types of schedules, a door schedule, a window schedule, a member schedule, looking at maybe my decking member material that I'm going to be looking at as well. Those can all be pulled off. So if I put it back into 2D, go back in there and create maybe a window schedule, it'll show me that I'm going to mark all of the windows with a number 1. They're my 4 by 4'11" windows, and there's 7 of them. That information, you can set that up as how you want that information to be relayed. So if I wanted it to, in my schedule, show the height and width of the window or the width of the height or the actual manufacturer, the supplier, I can pull all of that information off of that window and that door. They know what they are. They know how to provide all of this various information. So you can have a schedule. So you could bring that to your window manufacturer and say, here's a schedule of all the windows that I need for this particular project, and have them ordered right away. The windows and the doors, just like the walls, that if I double click on them, it brings up their information. And again, they'll have detailed information about how you're going to frame it in the wall, so you can be very specific how it's going to appear. But most important about BIM information and pulling information about this door is this last quantity page, where you can give it the manufacturer, the supplier, the price, category. So if you wanted to reorganize that information and pull it off. At the same time, we can assemble information that we also want to order when we order this door. Every time I order this door, I want to make sure that I've got a lock set and a hinge set so that I can put this door up. So we can order all of that material at the same time. And we can visually see it in 3D when we're looking at our model. When you're building an information model, a BIM model, you can, in our software, look through and go through all of the different tools as you're going through. Just make your way across, or you can always skip over some and just click on a tool. So I'll click on roofs right now. It doesn't mean I have to have ceilings or floors put in first. I could put a roof on right away. Again, a catalog of materials. I pick a roof, I left click, it places the roof on for me. It's putting on an 8/12 hip roof, which I've chosen from the catalog. But now that it's on, I can make changes to that as well. So first thing I could do is clicking on walls. If the design changes and my client wants to move things around, I can click on this dimension and say, I need this to be exactly 18 feet wide. or I need this to be exactly 14 feet deep. And when it's doing that, it's also, you can see, updating the roof. The roof is moving right along with it. Or I can take a wall, like this one right here at the front, and move it back. And see how it automatically reconfigures what the roof is supposed to look like? It knows that these two are working together, and if I move the walls, the roof will update with it. If I click on the overhang of the home, notice all of the arrows. In our BIM model, those arrows are holding key information about that side of the roof. That arrow, all of the arrows at this particular time are telling them that they're 8 and 12 slope and that it's a hip style. But if you click on an arrow, it makes it green. And a green arrow means I want to take that particular surface of the roof that that arrow is pointing to, and I want to change it. I want to change one of the properties. Maybe I don't want it to be an 8-12. Maybe I want it to be a 6 and 12. Or maybe instead of being a hip, I want it to be a gable. Or maybe this is where the plate height is going to be raised or lowered in that section. So you choose the arrows, look at their properties, and that will take you back into the properties of the roof, where I can say, these two green arrows that I was pointing to, I need those to be 6 and 12 slope. Or their overhang. Maybe we want an increased overhang of 18 inches in that area, so I've changed their overhang value. Up in the upper left-hand corner of this dialog box, we deal with the roof shape, and right now it's got the picture of a hip. If I click on that graphic, it'll pull up all of the various choices that I have instead of being a hip. I can make it a gable or a mansard or a Dutch hip. Imagine changing the plans, and I've done it myself, hand drafting. The client comes along and says, well, we want 2 gables there and 2 hips. It's not as easy as it looks to just change all of those hand-drafted lines. You have to take into consideration what it's going to look like, change your elevations, change your roof plan. But here, just by saying gable and OK, it automatically updates all of that for me. And now I've got 2 gables. And looking at the 3D model in a perspective, now I can take that client on that virtual tour outside just to make sure that they're happy with everything that I've drawn so far. And if working with the client directly and they decide, I want some changes, I want to be able to change those walls, maybe I want a different material. Well, you can select any wall that you've drawn. I'll just select a couple here, just a few of them here. And just by right-clicking, you can automatically replace them. By replacing these walls, I'm going to make them instead 2x6 stone walls. Click OK. Now these walls know that they're stone. Look at my cursor. It comes close to those stone walls. It knows that it's 2x6 stone. And these walls know that they're 2x6 vinyl siding. And if I look in the quantity information of our entire model, now in the exterior finishes, I'll now see stone and mortar sand and brick ties. Those have all been added now that I've chosen stone because it recognizes the different materials. So working directly with a client, well, what would it look like if it was stone? And what would the cost difference be if it was stone? And if you had your pricing in there, you could instantly tell them, well, that's going to be an additional $5,000 to change those walls. Well, then they could say, well, what if I just changed this wall and replaced it, and maybe I just want it to be stone and siding instead. So maybe a half stone, half siding wall. So they can see what that's going to look like if they just did half of the wall and maybe had that cost savings there. So another benefit of the BIM model is it's intelligent, and as I'm changing those elements and saying that that wall is now stone, I don't have to rehatch it in hand, or even in a 2D CAD drawing, reapply a different hatch pattern. I'm showing them the actual materials. And those materials could be the exact manufacturer material that I grabbed from the website or I took a digital picture of. So lots of great information you can pull from this model, including all the materials that it's going to need. With this model as well, I'm just going to double click on this wall. Let's take a look at when we're doing the energy analysis and we're sending it out to ResCheck so they can do their full analysis on the building, where does it get the information about these particular walls and the insulative values to them? Well, if I scroll down in the properties of the wall, at the very bottom, that's where you can see where we can input energy information. So I can tell it to include this wall in any calculation that I do. And what is the wall type? Is it a normal wall? And with that, what is the R value for that wall? So depending on the type of walls that you're creating and the insulation that you're providing in those walls and materials that you're providing in those walls, you can alter that R value to reflect the actual R value that you're building into your homes. So when you send it out into ResCheck, so it can do the full energy calculations on the model and spit out your final energy calculations that you can hand in with your building submittals, you know that they're going to be correct. Going back. Now I'm also going to look at when we started drawing this model, how did it know how tall those walls were? How does it know how I want to frame those walls? I know I want to use it as a 2x6, but how did it know how many I needed? What was the spacing it used? And what about those top plates? Did it double up them for me? Where does it pull all of that information from? I'm going to go up to View, Framing, and Display the Framing. And I'm going to put this into what we call rendered outline view so that you can see the individual members a little bit better. So looking at how it's framed this wall so far, and all of our walls, we can see that it's got a single bottom plate, it's got a double top plate, and there's a row of blocking halfway up the walls. Looking at our building locations information up here under the settings pull-down menu, this is where it looks every time it goes to draw something. So as soon as I picked that very first and original wall that I started building, it came and looked here. On my ground floor, it saw that, oh, walls are supposed to be 8 foot 1 1/8 tall. So if you know predominantly that your designs are going to have 9 foot walls or 10 foot walls, you could come in and alter this information. But remember, when we looked at the walls and their properties, every wall can have a unique height. So if I wanted the wall to be 10 foot wall tall, and then the next wall beside it to be 8 foot, and then I have a 4 foot knee wall, but then I have a sloped wall, all of that can be handled. This is just the defaults that you're putting here. You can also see the default framing information. Here's where it's telling it that this is going to be framed 16 inches on center of the double top plate, and it's blocking halfway through. So if I go in there and I tell it, well, default, I don't want any blocking halfway up the wall. I just want it to be 16 inches on center with a double top plate. Well, when I click OK, and all the way out of here, you can see how it eliminates the blocking halfway through. It looked at my default and said, okay, I get it. I can see how we can change that. Another thing you can look at is look at this front wall and how it's balloon framed it up to accommodate that gable end wall. What if you wanted to have a knee wall built there? Well, the model can handle that as well. I'm just going to take this out of framing mode for us so we can see itself, display all but the framing. I'm going to take a look at this wall again. And its properties are telling us that it wants us to automatically extend up to the roof. So when I put a roof on, match the plate height, match the shape of the roof. So in doing so, it automatically brought it up and went to the underside of that gable and created one continuous wall. Well, I'm going to tell it to stop at 8 foot 1 1/8. Be a regular height wall, do not fill in the area of the gable. So when I click OK, you can see now we've got a big hole in the house. I'm just going to tip my model down here for a little bit, and I'm going to click on the roof. And looking at the roof and those arrows, I want to look at the properties of this front arrow that's telling it that it's a gable. In there, that's where I can tell it that I want to display a gable and wall, and that wall itself, I'll do it as an alternative material so that you can see it differently. I'll do it that same siding. So underneath the gable end here, we're building a siding wall, and that's what I've chosen right there. I've told it that with my display gable, in that gable end portion, I want to build a wall. And that wall, I want to be 2x6 with siding. So when I click OK then, it takes that information and puts a sided wall up there for me. Now if I look at the framing, it'll also recognize that that is a separate wall, and you can see that you've got gable end framing going on there. So it's customizable, so it can follow your framing needs, so that when you're doing a bill of materials, it's not basing it on some type of formula, it's actually framing it. and it's framing it the way you prefer to frame it. You can tell it exactly how to lay out those studs in that wall, how to frame it in gable end situations. So when you get the material reports, you know that that's going to be accurate. Pulling information off of a model, a BIM model, is only useful if that information is going to be accurate. So you want to make sure that you can get in there and customize as much of the information as you need to. Back up to view, framing, display all but the framing. So I've got that intelligent model. It's giving me schedules. It's giving my bill of materials. I'm able to, if I put it in 2D, I'm going to put a ceiling in right now. And I'm going to go in for a tour on the inside. Place a new camera right here by the front door. And by placing a camera there by the front door, I'm telling it that I want to stand by the front door and look inside. And I left click again. So that little button down there at the bottom, place a new camera, that allowed me to put my camera by the front door and look inside, walking inside. Now I'm going to come over and use this little tool down here in the lower right that looks like a pair of feet. That tool will allow me with my feet, as I move forward, I'll walk forward. As I pull my cursor backwards, I'll walk backwards. So I can walk around and look around in this model. And while I'm in this model, I can add information and show a client exactly what it's going to look like again. So now I'm going to click on the Interiors tab. And the very last tool under the Interiors tab is called HVAC Elements. With the HVAC Elements, it allows me to put in any number of different HVAC elements, like this fireplace unit. Just placing it along this back wall right here. Left click, there it is. Now that I have that in, I might even want to pop in a couple more windows. So I can grab that window tool and put a window on either side. And if I wanted to have more lighting, we talked about interactive lighting and doing lighting controls. I'll go to the Interiors tab and click on Interior Lighting. And as I drag that light into the space, and I hope you can see that illuminating over the internet, and that as I move my cursor, that light will move with me so I can see the effects that lighting is going to have on the overall design. So as I'm moving my cursor around, I'm moving that light source with me, and I can see the effects that that light is going to have. Each light itself, if I look at the light that I just inserted here, that recessed light, double click on it, each light can have wattage associated to it. So it's not just the image of a recessed canned light. This canned light knows that it's a 40-watt bulb. So when it's illuminating, it's giving that wattage. And you can change and edit that to any wattage, so you can directly show your clients the effects that lighting is going to have on their overall design as well. So if they want to maybe leave out a couple lights that you think are vital to the design, you can show them just how dark it's going to look throughout the entire model except for that one space. So it really helps to illustrate those issues. Now I'm going to move over to this portion right here. In this portion, if this was a kitchen, if I popped a window into this space right here, and we want to build cabinets all around it, if you're working with a cabinet designer, you would want to export this model out so they knew exactly where that window was, and when they're building the cabinets, they can go around it. Our software Envisioneer exports out to a number of different file formats. We can send this out as a 2D image if you wanted to just send this plan out so a client can see it stagnantly. We can send it out to Warehouser so it can do the joist calculations for you. CSD for the same, MyTech for the trussing. Boise BC Framer can also go out for the, again, your material products. Keymark and Simpson as well. Also, you'll see 2020 Design, which is a kitchen cabinet software. So working with your cabinet maker, if they're using 2020 for their design, you can export this right out. They can build the kitchen, and then they can send it right back to you so they can see the kitchen in this space. I'll quickly, in our software, design a kitchen for you. We do have kitchen tools as well. So if you need to illustrate what the kitchen looks like, you would use our Kitchen Wizard. I'm just going to tell it that we have a U-shaped kitchen, orientate the appliances and the plumbing fixtures, and then choose some materials. And again, our materials are simply JPEGs and bitmaps. So if I had the exact countertop material and the exact cabinet finish, digitally I could bring them in and show them exactly what it's going to look like. And then I'll hit next and finish, and I'll just lay out on the floor. That chalk line outline that you see is the outline of the cabinets, and I just left click where I want them to start and to stop. And when I click yes, it'll build that kitchen for me. So again, I can walk in virtually and take a look at the model. Each one of these elements that it put in, from that double gas range to the refrigerator to each cabinet, they all have intelligent information behind them as well. So if I look at this range, I could have some notes that I might want to type out about this range. Homeowner agrees to purchase this type of range. It is, and it needs these following items for installation, as an example. It can also link up to a website, and it can also play a sound file. Well, that might be helpful as if you want to attach that sound file. If you were putting this in a virtual portal for your clients to see, they could see the model itself, and you could play information about it. So it can add that information as well. And each one of these are individual elements, so even though it put that in as a big kitchen, I'm just hitting my delete key on the keyboard right now to delete out all of the cabinets that I don't want in the design. So you can make modifications to it as well and change it around. Again, use any of the tools that we've been using already, like the window tool, to grab a window, place it in, grab some lighting, place it where you know you're going to need task lighting in the space. So again, they can see the effects that lighting is going to have on that design, a good derivative of that model. Looking at this model then, and the different analyze options that we had, we've looked at the project estimate, where we've assembled all of the materials that went into all of the different things that we've inserted. Our walls, their framing, the roof, its framing, the roof finishes, the exterior openings, those windows that we've placed in, the finishes from the stone to the siding, to all of the different HVAC equipment that we put in. So far it was just a gas place, electrical, insulation, drywall, all of it's assembled here. Looking also through our Analyze tab, we can send that out to our res check information so that it can go out and be analyzed, looking at all of those R values that we've associated to the walls. You can associate them to the ceilings and the floors as well. One of our other export options here, when you're sending out the 3D model, if I export out this 3D model, I can send that out in DWG, DXF, 3D Studio format, Vermal, Lightscape, SketchUp, IFC, all of these different export options. So if you need to share the information with another design professional, you can share that information with them as well. Put it up on a website so people can, in a portal, walk around and see the effects of that model as well. Being a true BIM model allows you to pull off all of that information very easily. I'm going to slip now back to my PowerPoint presentation so we can continue the discussion about BIM and how it can be used for a builder. So when you're adopting BIM and you're approaching adding it into your office, key things that you should think about are ease of use. If you're going to be building a 3D model, you don't want to have to spend days and weeks doing so. It should be as quick and easy as I illustrated to you, point and click technology to put in those walls and automatically get in that information. Put in those windows by just left clicking with your mouse to place them all where you needed them to go. So the key approach to adopting BIM as a builder, make sure you find an application that's easy to use. And then when you have that 3D model, you want to get the maximum amount of information with the least amount of effort. Again, looking at ease of use. If I'm going to spend 15, 20 minutes, whatever we've spent building that model, I want to make sure that I'm getting the maximum amount of information out that is helpful to me. By drawing those walls, I know all the materials that are going to be used in that wall. By drawing that model, I could do all of my interference checking and make sure that nothing is going to interfere with anything else. By drawing that model, I can show those visuals to my clients to make sure that we're on the same page. Did they really want that wall to look that way? Did they really want those materials? It allows you to do that checking as well, maximizing that information that you're getting from it that's going to be helpful. I can share that. It can also help you to plan. When you're thinking of adopting a BIM package, you should have a plan in place. I'm going to start building 3D models because the number one reason you want to, think about it, focus on that reason, and then take all of the other derivatives into play. So your number one reason for maybe adopting a BIM model is the bill of materials that you're going to get out of it. Or the number one reason that you want to adopt using an intelligent model is so you can show the exact materials and how they're going to look in that building. Maybe the number two piece of information is it'd be really nice to share this information with my trades. So I can create and send this out to my cabinet designer in that export to 2020. Or I can get my trusses quickly if I send them that model, and I can send it off maybe to the building supply center that's using MyTech or Weyerhaeuser or Boise BC Framer to get the information quicker. Those might be your derivatives, but your primary factor, always keep it in mind. And then remember to keep your eye on the future. I got my immediate needs now. We're really good with building these models. I can show my clients really quick. Now I'm going to look at the future and say, next implementation that I'm going to be doing is I want to start printing out plans, the wall panel diagram, so I can send it to my framers on site. Or perhaps I want to do 3D layouts so I can show them to clients and actually print them. And then share them with all of your subtrades. Now, I wanted to bring in a real-life usage of BIM with a company that's using it. And the company that I'm going to profile now is Jack Zimmer of Zimmer Design. Jack uses our Envisioneer software as his BIM application. And by doing so, here's a BIM model on the screen right now that Jack created. The information that Jack pulls out of here that he can send off to the local building supply center so that they can have the bill of materials to use to create this model to build the home. And my next screen will show you this is the actual building that was made then from this 3D model. So through his planning, working with his client, they came up with this design. And then by having that design, he sent the information off to his building supply center so he could have quotes for his clients. And then they chose their materials accordingly. After coming up with the plan, they chose those materials, and then they started to build on site. And as they were building on site, they could walk themselves through virtually to make sure that everything was working for them. Submitting the plans with the building analysis so that they can have the information about the energy efficiency that needs to be there for that submittal in Jack's local area. So that one simple model that he built, he used it in all different areas of his building. So he could get his materials on site quicker, so he could work with the client so they knew exactly what materials they wanted to choose, so he could submit his plans. He submits his own plans for permit purposes. He submitted all the working drawings, and I'll show you how to do that next. And he got the energy analysis that he needed for that submittal as well. So a real-life example of how BIM, and using that one model, solved all these problems for Zimmer Design when he goes to submit a plan for permit purposes. Now I'm going to go back to our 3D model. And because I have this 3D model, if you are thinking of, as a builder, being the design build team as well, and submitting your own plans for submittal purposes, because we have this 2D plan, that 3D model already, we can start to pull off information regarding the full sets of working drawings. My first step in that, I'm going to actually build maybe a couple more interior walls quickly so we have some walls to look at when we're creating this plan. So really open concept right now. So I'll just left click, left click, left click. Every time I left click, I'm creating the end of a wall. So I'm just going to come up and create these walls as I need to for that design. So now that I have those, I'll just pop in some openings so we can actually get into those rooms. And here's our plan. Our client is happy. They like the bill of materials. They like the 3D views that we've been able to create for them. So our next step is dimensioning this all out and submitting this plan. Now, as we are creating the 3D model, we've looked at the 2D, we've looked at the 3D, but it also creates our elevations, our sections, our details as well. So here's our walls that we're creating on all of the different faces. You can go in and create all of your elevations. They're automatically part of that 3D model so that you can automatically put those down as part of your plan submittal as well. So I'm going to put this back into a 2D view. And let's start adding dimensions, and then we'll add them to our elevations too. Up here under dimension settings, under settings, dimension settings, this is where you can specify how you want to dimension the plan. Do you like to dimension to the either side of an opening or to the center line? There's a choice. Do you like to dimension to the exterior brick or to the stud? Choose how you want it to be dimensioned. As many choices as you want. And then when you click OK, it'll use those tools, dimensions, auto exterior dimensions. By going up and choosing this command, all I have to do is click on it, and it takes those settings and automatically dimensions the plan for me. Tools, dimensions, auto interior dimensions. Just like the exterior dimensions, I'm going to draw a line through my building, and when I left click and left click, it'll leave a string of dimensions to every wall for me. So I can quickly put all the dimensions on. When we have that information, then we can take that and start creating that for our drawings that we have. So we want to make sure that we have all of the information that we need for our model. So while we have it dimensioned, we can add notes to it as well. So depending on the information that we want to put in, we can put in as much information as we want to for those. Now I'm going to go to these drawing sheets at the bottom of the screen, one floor plan. That brings me to my drawing sheets, and here on my drawing sheets is where I can drop in that information. I'm going to tell it that I want a 2D floor plan, 1/4 inch scale. There it is on my screen. This little eye looking down at the bottom left-hand corner of that dialog box allows me to filter off things I don't want to see. I don't need to see the extent of my terrain. Maybe I don't want to see my roof. By closing these eyes, it creates different types of plans. So when I'm creating those different types of plans here, this is how you can also pull out key information to share with your trades. I want to show everything about my lighting and my electrical to give to my my electrician. I want to turn off everything except my roof framing so I can give it to my framers. So this allows you to create different types of plans. And then you just insert them onto your drawing sheet to print them out. So you're quickly creating your working drawings. Go back up, define a smart view. This time I'm going to go back down to that view filter, the little eye, and say display nothing. Absolutely nothing. I'm turning off all the eyes. The only thing I want to see is my roof plan. And now that I have my roof plan, I want it to be at a reduced scale so it'll fit on that same sheet. And there it is on the sheet. So very quickly I can create all of my working drawings. I'm going to go to a second piece of paper. On the second piece of paper, I'm going to again define a smart view. This time I'm going to look at my elevations. I'm going to zoom out. I can leave them just in this hidden line view, or I can tell it that I want to see that in a hatch pattern view so I can see all of my materials as well. At the same time, I can tell it that I want to dimension this to my head height, to my floor level, so it'll automatically dimension them as well. You tell it what scale you want that to be at. I want it to be at a 1/4 inch equals a foot, and then I hit insert. And when I hit insert, a copy attaches to my cursor. There's my elevations done. Because it's an intelligent model, it can pull off all of this information quickly. It knew how to hatch all of that different information. It knew those were stone, it knew those were siding, and it automatically applied that information to it. Creating your construction documents is another derivative of that BIM model, just like Jack Zimmer was doing in his example. I've talked a lot, and I want to make sure that I cover your questions. I know we're already getting into overtime here, so I'm going to go directly to that chat panel. That's part of your GoToMeeting console to the right of your screen. There it will give you opportunity to type in questions that you might have so that I can answer for you. Type in your questions and I'll answer them live. We are taping today's broadcast, so if you came in a little bit late or you have to leave a little bit early, we will post this up and send you a link to it as well. But let me get to your questions. Can all or most of what you just demonstrated be performed with your Pro Architect version? So for those of you that aren't familiar with the different versions of our software, I'll take you up to our website, www.cadsoft.com. And on our website, www.cadsoft.com, you will come to our products page. And our product page has a really good, if I'm scrolling down here, it has a great chart to show you all of the different features of all the different software. So our Pro Architect question was, did everything I do today, can it be done in Pro Architect? Pro Architect, you see, cannot do the advanced framing. So when I went in and turned on and off the different parts of the framing, Pro Architect wouldn't be able to do that. And when it's looking at quantity takeoffs, it does what we call a basic takeoff, where all the different elements that were attached to that wall would be in my takeoff, but I couldn't change any of them. So if I ever wanted to change maybe my size of my drywall sheets, instead of a 4x8 sheet, if I wanted a larger sheet, it couldn't do that in Pro Architect. You would need Building Essentials. So everything that I showed you today is capable in our Building Essentials software. So depending on what you wanted to use BIM for, if you wanted to use BIM for the 3D model to show your clients exactly what it's going to look like and take them through a walkthrough, Pro Architect would be a great choice for you. But if you wanted to do the bill of materials and be able to custom frame it so it's framing exactly like you want it to, and to be able to swap out different materials in that assembled information, you'd want our Building Essentials. Great question. Okay, next question. How are you inserting structural beams and columns with this software? Good idea. So let's, first of all, maybe what I'll do to illustrate putting in structural beams and columns, let's put a foundation on. So I'm going to come up here to our wizards, and this is where I chose the kitchen builder, but this time I'm going to choose our foundation builder. This particular tool allows me to do one of two things. I can put an additional story above, so I can build a second story based on my ground floor footprint, or I can build a foundation, and I'm going to build a foundation. And looking at foundations, depending on where you are in the world, our software ships around the world in 4 different languages, and I know foundation systems even from county to county can be different, let alone state to state. So you can have all of these different types of foundation systems. So I'm going to do a full basement so we can see all of the options available. If I was to do a full 10-inch concrete wall, I'll put a 4-inch floor slab down there. But for those of you that are slab on grade or a monolithic slab, you would just make these same choices. You just wouldn't have to make as many choices as what I have to for a full basement. Then you show how everything is going to be stacked up on each other. And when I was making that selection for the materials, when I selected that type of wall, that type of slab, that type of footing, it knew the materials involved as well. So I'll get cubic yards of concrete in my calculations too. So when I hit finish, that's all I had to do is to build the foundation. By going down here in the lower left-hand corner of my screen, I'm going to switch my location to the foundation location so that I'm looking at the foundation. And when I'm looking at the foundation plan, you can see I can lightly ghosted see my ground floor above, so I can see where those materials are going to reside. So I want to put a beam through this area right here. So I'm going to come up to our members command and use advanced members. The advanced members tool, I'll point out, is a Building Essentials tool as well. For those of you that are looking at Pro Architect, you would just have the members command. The difference between the two is members command allows me to put in one member at a time. The advanced members tool allows me to put in multiple members at a time. I can have as many plies as I want, and I can even put it on a slope if I needed to. So I'm going to say that I want it 8 feet off of the basement floor. I want it to be whatever member size. I mean, it could be a I-beam that I could put in. It could be 3 2x10s. Whatever I want to choose in my members dialog box is what I would put in. So I'll choose this W8 by 24. And I'm saying there's one of them. And it's 8 feet off the floor. It's a girder beam. And I hit insert. And then I'm saying it's from this corner to this corner. Right click, finish. And there's my W8 by 24. And if I needed a column smack dab in the middle of that, this tool right here, right beside our members tool, is our columns tool. Then I have a full catalog of different column choices to choose from. I'll use a steel column. When I put my cursor, and I'm just going to zoom in on this so we can see this a little bit better as it happens. When I get my cursor right in the middle, it will find that middle for me. See, my cursor looks like a circle with an X. If I move it away, it's not going to have that same circle with an X. It wants to be right in the middle. It's going to snap to that. Left click, there is our column. So that's how you would put in beams and columns in the software. And again, if that was instead of a steel beam built up of a bunch of 2x10s, it would give me the length of those members and how many I need to order as well. And it'll also, this W8 by 24, it'll appear my material list as well. Next question. Do your roof designs have a roof detail with an exceeded bottom chord with a 16 inches on center overhang? So if I wanted the members of my roof, I'm going to go over here to the ground floor, to exceed out. So if I had an extended overhang in one area and maybe I wanted to have a member coming out, extending out from that, same command that I used for the steel beam in our basement, that member command, one of the most flexible in our software, allows you to put in any type of member. So that could be an extra piece of trim somewhere, or a steel beam, or maybe little extra rafter tails sticking out from my roof as well. So that member command would do that. And with that member command, you can have any profile set to it as well. So if I wanted a special and specific profile set to that member, I can custom put in that profile as well. Someone said, as a designer, is this the right software for me? Well, as a designer, what you should do when evaluating any software is, first of all, you're doing the right thing of sitting through a presentation like this, so you can see it in action and see what it does. Next thing that I would recommend doing is, if you go up to our website, www.cadsoft.com, download trials of different software. Test drive it for yourself and see which ones you're comfortable using. Right on our main page, you will see download the trial. Click on that and you can have a copy of the software that I'm using today that will be good for 30 days, so you can test it out. The only thing you can't do during your trial period is print and use our various exports. All the other tools that I use, drawing the walls, windows, doors, roof, putting them onto working drawing sheets for your full working drawings can be done. You just can't print. So is this the right one for you as a designer? Test drive it and see. I'll draw your eye also on our website up here to our Client Center. So when you're doing evaluations of different softwares, look at the various tutorials that are available for you as well. Here in our Client Center, we have a number of different videos and books for you to read on the software. So if your main concern is creating documentation, working drawings, or building the walls, doors, and windows, look at all the different videos that you can watch and get information on how to do that, so that when you start using the trial or you're using the trial, you have as much knowledge as you can on those particular tools. Do you have DF listed in your default materials, and how do you adjust heights to say 8 foot 3/4 instead of 8 foot and 1/8? Great question. So any of our thinking you're referring to Douglas fir with your DF. In our materials, we do have Douglas fir as well. So we have spruce pine fir, yellow pine, and Douglas fir. So you can choose from. And I'm hoping, and if I'm not correct in your DF there for Douglas fir, let me know. But how would we change the walls to be a different height? So if I came up here to settings and building locations where we said 8 foot 1 1/8, so we could get our 92 5/8 pre-cut stud lengths, you could come up here and type in any value that you wanted there. So if I typed in 8 foot 1.75, it would know that that's 8 foot 1 3/4. Or I could type in 8 foot 1 3/4, and it would recognize that as well. So just by typing in the new height that you want, that's how you can change that default height. Now every wall, once it's inserted, if I double click on this one as well, once it's inserted, you can adjust their heights as well. These walls were all put in at 8 foot 1 1/8, and it recognizes that height. If I need to change them, I can come right in here and say that this is now a 4 foot knee wall as an example. So when a wall is inserted, you can directly click on it to change its height. Can you add a radon vent pipe to your basement foundation detail? Yes. Now I'm going to bring it back down to our foundation location and zoom in here. Anytime you need any kind of piping details or anything like that, I want you to think of our column and beam and members command. Members aren't just structural members. Because members can have any kind of profile put into them, you can have any kind of profile and piping that you need. So here you can see I've created a sprinkler pipe by using our circle hollow. So if you're wanting to put in any radon piping or anything like that, use our members command. And as you're putting it in and around your model, because it's an actual member, it knows how long it is. So you're going to get the total linear footage as well. Another great part of our software, if there's any kind of custom element that you need, because we can import and export in so many different file formats, you can bring in any kind of custom block that you find out on the internet as well. So if you were out on the internet and you wanted to find, and you found, as an example, a meter, an electrical meter. Maybe I'll show you how to bring that in because I just brought one in the other day as myself. So I'm going to say electrical meter. I'm going to say that that is a exterior element, and I'll just say that that is a equipment. I hit select. We can import elements. I'm going to go to my downloads here. We can import elements in SketchUp format, AutoCAD format, and 3D Studio format. So any kind of custom element you want, do a Google search for that element, and I'm just going to put this into my detail so I can find the one that I just brought in. Here's the, I think this is the meter. Yeah, so here's a meter. I want to put it on the house. Next, next. It shows me if I want to turn anything off. What's the 2D footprint going to look like? Now, if I remember correctly, when they drew this out in 3D, it's huge. So this will give me another opportunity to tell you how you can scale things. So here it is here. This is an electrical meter, if you can imagine. So I'm going to double click on it, and you can see whoever originally drew it so that it's 5 feet wide. So I'm going to click on that and tell it that it's only 16 inches wide so that it's going to scale it all accordingly. So even when you bring in a 3D block that you find out in the internet, those still can be intelligent objects. We can apply the intelligence to them by changing their sizing and adding quantity information so that we know that this is in our different electrical stage of, so it's going to put it in the right material portion, and the division, the part number, all of that can be added to this block so that it knows what it is and how it's supposed to be inserted. So I'll just give it a turn and place that on our walls. So any kind of element that you want, you can find that out on the internet as well as using the piping through our members and columns that are already in the projects as well. What is the range of varying complexities of assembly types as part of the standard catalog? Well, the catalog that I'm using today is our shipping catalog. I've created elements on the fly as we go, but in those assemblies, you can assemble any kind of information about the different materials that you want to take off. So when I'm looking at siding and OSB, depending on what you want to take off, all of these are based on formulas for the actual materials. So as long as there's a formula that you can think of, I put one of these every X amount of feet or over the X amount of square footage, then you can calculate it and add it in. You can add as many different assembled items as you want and continue to add different materials that you want to quantify as well. You can add as many as you want. And whatever type of formula, you can see some of ours are quite complicated depending on the material. I'm taking the interior wall area plus opening area, dividing it by 32. That's my area of a drywall sheet. I'm timesing it by 12, and then I'm dividing it by 500 for how many feet of roll there is for drywall tape. So you can get quite complex in your assemblies and materials, and any material can be added. If a builder depends on outsourced digital design from architectural designers, how is your product applicable to them in building a model and creating estimates along apply it to you in a CAD, an AutoCAD file? Those can be directly imported. So I'm going to import a PDF file here to show you that, and I will just find that on my hard drive here. I think I've got it on my desktop. I will show you a presentation plan for estimates. I'm going to open that up. It's going to open up the PDF file. So here's something that you might get from your architectural designer, your architect, that they might provide for you. Maybe it's just the PDF, maybe it's the DWG file. When I have it here, I'm going to do a number of things. First, I'm going to rotate it because I want the orientation to be to the bottom of the screen. Next, I can check the scale. So my architectural designer told me that the distance between these 2 points is 10 feet. I want to double check that. So I pick on this little button here called Pick the Scale. Pick the Scale allows me to pick 2 points, and it's like it's calibrating the drawing for you. And I'm telling it between those 2 points that I've picked is actually 10 feet. And I click OK. Now I can bring in whatever portion of this plan. So I'm just going to crop around just one of them for you. So I'm just going to bring in this one floor plan. So whatever inside that blue crop box is what's going to be imported. What's outside of it is going to be left off. I'm going to dim it down a little bit, and then I'm going to hit Insert. Now I get a copy of that plan, left click, on my drawing screen. What I can use that for from my architectural designer is the basis of my bill of materials. So now that I have that, I'm going to pick on walls. And I'm going to go over and choose a type of wall. So I'll use our siding again. And then I'm going to right-click and tell it that I want to trace around a baseline of this model. So see, I'm just drawing a green line around the corners of this model. As I'm doing that, it's picking each one of those corners, right-click, Finish, and I tell it what I traced around. That green line that I traced represents an exterior veneer line. I went around the siding, or maybe I traced around the stud, or maybe I traced around the inside face. As soon as I click OK, those are walls. Those are 3D walls, so if I look at it in 3D, I already have the bill of materials now for those walls. So if you're getting your designs from an architect, an architectural designer, you can bring in the PDFs that they provide for you, or you can bring in the actual DWG file. They're both going to come in as flat 2D line drawings. But from there, just as quickly as I did there, tracing over top of it, you can get your bill of materials because you've just built that 3D model and it knows the elements that are being used in it. If a builder collaborates with MEP contractors in a design-build approach, how can their design be incorporated to avoid conflicts and uncover errors for building coordination purposes? So when you're looking and coordinating this with any kind of mechanical or electrical contractors, because you have that 3D model designed, you can then start to lay out the electrical plans. So if I put this back into 2D, and I'm just going to delete off that secondary 3D model, just for clarity purposes, and go back to our original model. If I started laying out our lights, so I had those recessed lights done, and then I started doing our wiring diagrams, I can start to lay those out, or using our members for columns and for piping that's going through. That's when I can see that I'm going to, perhaps even with this beam right here, if I wanted to have, and I'll just do a member right here, and I'll just use our sprinkler pipe as an example, I'm going to tell it that I want piping to go from here all the way to here. When I do that and I start drawing that pipe, if I go down to my foundation location and place a camera, it'll illustrate to me how everything's coming together. There's my sprinkler pipe going through, there's my beam coming through, there's my foundation walls, and I've turned off the visibility of the floor joists. But you can see how they all work together. So when you're trying to coordinate any mechanical or electrical elements that are being put in, draw those particular elements, especially those that you think may interfere with some structural elements that are part of your design. And then when I'm printing this out, I can turn off the visibility of different elements that are only important to that particular trade. So I could turn off absolutely everything except my walls. Maybe I keep on my structural members and my electrical elements. So I can hand that off to my electrician, so when he's on site, he can see where everything needs to be placed. And any kind of 3D visuals that you can provide here, he can use those to say, I see exactly where they want to run that particular pipe, or that particular ductwork, or that particular run of wires for whatever reason for your building itself. Take advantage of the 2D plans that you can provide them for the layouts, and any 3D visuals, especially in difficult areas where you know it's going to be tight to pull in all of the HVAC and the plumbing and the electrical. That seems to be all of my questions, and I appreciate a lot of you staying around for what came to be an hour and 20-minute presentation so we could answer all of your questions. If you have any further questions, please don't ever hesitate to reach out and send us an email. Support@cadsoft.com for any technical questions is a great resource for you to use, or any questions about what product is best for me. You can reach out to sales@cadsoft.com, and they'll be able to answer your questions as well. And I'll also put up on the screen right here, I'll just write it here, our contact details. I have that in our final screen here of our PowerPoint. There's our contact details for you up on the screen. We have as our mission statement for our company, BIM is for everyone. And we always want to say that that isn't just a tagline, it really is our mission statement. We truly believe that with one simple model, that design that you come up with from a homeowner can be shared and distributed through the entire design process. So as your designer, architectural designer, architect uses it, passes it on to the builder so he can use it for his building supply information, passes it on to his LBM building supply store so they can order the products. It can all automate the business for you, just as it has for, as we put up there, 70% of building professionals are adopting BIM. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out and contact us. We would be more than happy to answer any future questions that you might have. And I know there was one just put up there. Do you have time to go over existing and propose for a model addition? Absolutely. I know these are important questions to everyone. And another question was just posted about remodel situations. How do I show that? If I go up here to the ground floor, I'm going to click on my walls as an example here. I'm just going to turn off the visibility for a second of my roof so it's easy, and my dimensions, just for clarity purposes so we can all see it. If I pick on my walls here around my design, I'm going to pick on these ones and say select all similar. So it selects all the walls. And then I'm going to tell it not to select these ones right here. Actually, I'm just going to select these. Yeah, select all similar, but don't select these ones. So what I'm telling it is I want all of the walls to be selected except these 3 walls. For the walls that I selected, let me just select that again. Select all similar, but do not select you, you, and you. I'm going to look at the properties of those walls that I've selected. And when I'm looking at their properties, what I want to tell them is that edit, cancel, edit, select previous. I want to tell them that with those walls, I don't want them to be a general wall. When I set those to a general wall, that means they're not going to frame. That means I'm not going to get the quantities for framing. And then I'm going to go to my quantity tab, and I'm going to say do not include in the quantities. Now those particular walls, I'm going to show them that they are existing walls. So I'm going to change all of those walls to say these are existing walls. And here under the appearance page, what I can also do is I can change their color. So I want these walls to be drawn in just yellow as an example, so you can see that coming through. And when I click OK, they're all yellow, and they no longer quantify. The only walls that are going to quantify are the walls that I've drawn. And that can be the same for demolish purposes as well. So if this wall particular here, I look at its properties, I can again say set it to a general wall so it doesn't frame. There's no framing information included. I'm going to go to its appearance page, and I can set those walls to also be yellow and their line type to be dash dot and no quantities. So now that I know visually looking at that wall that it's a demolished wall, this one is an existing wall, and this is my new construction. I'll only get quantities on those walls, not these walls. They won't frame, and they'll look different in my 2D drawings as well. Great questions, everyone, today. Another question, cost for various modules or packages. That's up on our website. If you go to the products page, the pricing is right there. The pricing can be a monthly subscription, or if you prefer to own the software, if I look at our Building Essentials or Pro Architect here, more information, it'll bring up information about the product itself, and you can go from a monthly plan to an annual plan. You're still on a subscription basis, or a full purchase of the product itself. So pick on the product that best suits your needs, looking at our products page, or call and talk to one of our representatives here. Tell them what your goals are for the software. They'll point you in the right direction of what product is best for you, and maybe what pricing model is best for you as well. Great, I'm getting everybody's getting great information. If you enjoyed today's presentation, I hope to see you in a future webinar. We will be putting on more. So contact us if you want to be put on that mailing list for future projects. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day. Bye-bye.